Have you ever wondered what could be more terrifying than the Grim Reaper during the Middle Ages? Well, the answer is not for the faint of heart. The specter of disease loomed large during this period, casting a shadow of dread over both the highborn and the humble. The Middle Ages, a time of knights and castles, was also an era marred by deadly diseases. These were not just common colds or fevers that we today can easily shake off with a bit of rest and medication. No, these were relentless killers that struck without warning and spared no one. We're talking about the plague, that infamous bringer of the Black Death. Smallpox, the devastating disease that left survivors horribly scarred. Leprosy, a slow and cruel affliction that led to a life of isolation and despair. And dysentery, a silent killer that could wipe out entire communities within days. Join us as we delve into the fascinating and somewhat morbid world of medieval diseases. Our journey into the past begins with a disease shrouded in fear and stigma: leprosy. In the tapestry of time, few diseases have woven their threads of terror as deeply as leprosy did during the Middle Ages. Known as a biblical affliction, it was a specter that hovered over the lives of millions, casting long shadows of dread and despair. Leprosy, or Hansen's disease, as we know it today, was one of the earliest known diseases of the Middle Ages. It's a chronic infectious disease caused by a slow-growing type of bacteria called Mycobacterium leprae, and it mainly affects the skin, peripheral nerves, and upper respiratory tract. The symptoms were horrifying: skin lesions that were lighter than normal skin tone, numbness and muscle weakness, and damage to the peripheral nerves that led to crippling disfigurements. Imagine, if you will, living in a time when a mere skin blemish could be the harbinger of a debilitating lifelong affliction. In terms of treatment, the options were limited and largely ineffective. The medical understanding of the era was rudimentary at best. Many believed leprosy was a divine punishment, an irrevocable sentence handed down from the heavens. Those afflicted were often isolated in leprosariums or leper colonies away from the general populace, a testament to the pervasive fear and stigma associated with the disease. The societal impact of leprosy was profound. It created a chasm between the healthy and the afflicted, a divide that was as much about fear as it was about the disease itself. The leper, in the eyes of medieval society, was a living symbol of sin, punishment, and mortality. Yet amidst this landscape of fear and stigma, there were also stories of compassion. Some religious orders dedicated themselves to the care of lepers, offering what little comfort could be provided in a world that had turned its back. Despite its prevalence, leprosy was just the beginning of the Middle Ages battle with disease. This journey into the past reminds us of the resilience of humanity, even in the face of such devastating afflictions. We've come a long way from the leprosariums of the Middle Ages, but the lessons of history remain as relevant today as they were then. Next, we encounter a disease that did not discriminate between royalty and peasantry: smallpox. As the Middle Ages unfolded, a new specter began to cast its shadow across Europe, one that would bring kings and commoners alike to their knees. This was the era when smallpox made its gruesome debut. Its arrival is shrouded in mystery, with theories suggesting it was brought by traders from the east or perhaps from the African continent. Regardless of its origins, smallpox soon became a dreaded household name, recognized by its signature symptoms: high fever, severe fatigue, and an unforgiving rash that developed into pus-filled sores. The disease spread with an alarming speed, leaving in its wake a trail of devastation. Its victims were marked not only by the physical scars it left, but also by the fear and stigma it bred. Smallpox was a relentless foe, claiming the lives of 3 out of every 10 people it infected. This insidious disease was no respecter of status or position. It swept through the grandest of castles and the humblest of huts with equal disregard, proving that royal blood offered no protection against its wrath. The annals of history are filled with notable figures who were touched by its deadly hand. Take for instance King Louis XV of France, a monarch known for his extravagance and opulence. His reign was marked by a series of political and military successes, but it was smallpox that would have the last word. In 1774, the disease claimed his life, serving as a chilling reminder of the vulnerability of even the most powerful. Then there was Queen Mary II of England. A beloved queen, Mary's life was cut short at the age of 32 by the same dreadful disease. Her untimely death plunged England into a state of mourning and left a permanent mark on the nation's history. But it wasn't only the nobility who suffered. Smallpox was a cruel equalizer, striking down the poor and the wealthy, the young and the old, the weak and the strong. It was a grim reaper that sowed seeds of despair and death across all strata of society. The scourge of smallpox was a stark reminder of the fragility of life during the Middle Ages. It underscored the harsh reality that regardless of one's station in life, no one was immune to the ravages of disease. It was a dark chapter in human history, a testament to our collective struggle against invisible enemies. As deadly as smallpox was, an even more terrifying disease was on the horizon. Now, we arrive at the most infamous disease of the Middle Ages, the Black Death. The Black Death, also known as the pestilence, the Great Mortality, or simply, the Plague. It was a horror that descended upon Europe in the mid-14th century, a disease so deadly, so swift, that it changed the course of history. For the unprepared populations of medieval Europe, it was a catastrophe like no other. The Black Death is believed to have originated in the dry plains of Central Asia, traveling along the Silk Road, the bustling trade route that connected the East and West. Carried by the fleas on black rats, the disease made its way to the shores of Europe, first landing in the port city of Messina in Sicily in October of 1347. The symptoms of this disease were gruesome, beginning with fever, chills, and weakness, followed by the appearance of swollen painful lymph nodes, or buboes, from which the disease gets its name. These buboes were often accompanied by necrosis, as the skin turned black due to internal bleeding. The end, when it came, was swift and merciless, often within a week of the first symptoms. The death toll was staggering. It's estimated that between 30 and 60% of Europe's total population was wiped out, equating to somewhere between 20 and 50 million people. The Black Death was not a selective reaper. It took the young, the old, the rich, and the poor. It crept into castles and hovels alike, leaving a swath of devastation in its wake. But the Black Death was more than just a disease. It was a catalyst for profound societal and economic changes. The massive reduction in population led to labor shortages, prompting an increase in wages for the surviving working class. It also led to a questioning of the church, which seemed powerless to stop the disease, leading to a loss of faith among many and contributing to the spiritual upheaval that would eventually give rise to the Reformation. In the wake of the Black Death, art and literature took a darker turn, reflecting the grim reality of life and death. The Dance of Death, or Danse Macabre, a popular artistic motif, depicted the universality of death, showing figures from all walks of life, from the Pope to the peasant, being led to their graves by skeletons. The disease also brought about changes in medicine. As the traditional Galenic medical practices proved ineffective against the plague, there was a shift towards empirical observation and a more scientific approach to understanding disease. This marked the beginnings of modern epidemiology and public health. The Black Death also led to the scapegoating and persecution of minority groups. Jews, beggars, and lepers were often blamed for the plague, leading to pogroms and mass killings. This was a dark chapter in the history of the Middle Ages, a stark reminder of the fear and ignorance that can lead to violence. From a broader perspective, the Black Death accelerated the transition from the feudal system to a more modern social and economic structure. The old order was dying, and in its place a new world was being born. The Black Death left a permanent scar on the face of Europe, but it was not the last disease to wreak havoc during the Middle Ages. Finally, we examine a disease often overlooked in discussions of medieval health: dysentery. This sinister ailment, often termed the bloody flux in the Middle Ages, was as common as it was deadly, a silent killer lurking in the shadows of unsanitary living conditions and poor hygiene. Dysentery was a common resident in the Middle Ages, largely due to the lack of clean water and proper sanitation. It spread like wildfire in crowded urban areas and military encampments, where people lived in close quarters and hygiene was a mere afterthought. The disease was a frequent visitor, a grim reaper silently claiming lives with its relentless grip. The symptoms of dysentery were not for the faint-hearted. It began with severe abdominal pain followed by fever and a dreaded bloody diarrhea. The constant loss of fluids led to extreme dehydration, leaving the sufferer weak and vulnerable. In a time when the understanding of disease was limited and treatment options were scarce, dysentery was a death sentence for many. Treatment in the Middle Ages was a mix of superstition, religion, and rudimentary medicine. Physicians, more akin to today's herbalists, would recommend a concoction of herbs and spices, while local priests would offer prayers and blessings. Yet neither could truly combat the disease. With no antibiotics to kill the bacteria and no understanding of how to prevent its spread, dysentery continued to claim lives with alarming regularity. The mortality rates associated with dysentery were significant. It's estimated that during the 100 Years' War, more soldiers fell victim to dysentery than to battlefield injuries. It was a silent, insidious killer, taking lives indiscriminately, from the lowliest peasant to the highest noble. Dysentery, though less infamous than the plague or smallpox, was a relentless killer in a world without proper sanitation. It serves as a stark reminder of the grim reality of life in the Middle Ages, and the importance of public health and sanitation in our modern world. As we leave the world of the Middle Ages behind, let's reflect on the impact of these deadly diseases. These diseases, each a specter in its own right, left a profound imprint on the medieval world, shaping societies, cultures, and spurring developments in medicine and public health. Leprosy, the disease of biblical proportions, was a pervasive and isolating force in the Middle Ages. Its mark was not only physical but also social, as those afflicted were often shunned and segregated. Yet it was this very segregation that led to the establishment of some of the earliest known leprosariums, or leper hospitals, setting the foundation for specialized healthcare institutions. Next, we remember the scourge of kings and commoners. This mysterious illness, whether it was scurvy, tuberculosis, or an array of other diseases, had a devastating impact on all strata of society. It was a grim reminder of the universality of disease, affecting both the powerful and the powerless. The widespread devastation it caused prompted the need for a more systematic approach to healthcare, leading to the birth of public health initiatives. Then, we turn our attention to the plague, a disease like no other. The Black Death, as it is often called, decimated populations and caused unprecedented social upheaval. Yet, out of this chaos emerged a greater understanding of disease transmission, leading to rudimentary quarantine measures. Finally, the silent killer, likely malnutrition or a combination of nutritional deficiencies, stalked the medieval world silently but relentlessly. This unseen foe underscored the importance of nutrition in health, a concept that continues to shape our understanding of medicine today. Each of these diseases, in its own way, had a profound impact on the Middle Ages, shaping society, culture, and medicine. They presented challenges of unimaginable scale, yet it was these very challenges that spurred progress. In the face of disease, societies adapted, cultures evolved, and medicine advanced. In the face of leprosy, we saw the emergence of specialized healthcare. The scourge of kings and commoners gave rise to public health initiatives. The Black Death led to the understanding of disease transmission and the concept of quarantine. And the silent killer underscored the importance of nutrition in health. These advancements, born out of the trials of disease, were the silver linings of a grim era. They laid the groundwork for the medicine and public health systems we have today, systems that continue to evolve in the face of new challenges. In the face of such adversity, the human spirit showed its resilience, turning the trials of disease into the triumphs of progress.